Florida State ends the month of September at 4-0, and they still are top 5 in the country in both recruiting and on the field in the polls. But there's some freak out from our fan base, and I understand why about recruiting. Welcome to the life of being a fanatic. I understand you guys are concerned about Charles Lester, Jeremiah Smith, others that aren't even committed to us. We're going to talk about all of those guys today. I know where Charles Lester was last weekend. We've got an update there that we'll share, but let's get right into it. First up, Nye Carr, decommitted from UGA this weekend, and he is somebody who has been very closely linked with Florida State for a long time now. His teammate, Landon Thomas, a five-star tight end who is currently committed to the Seminoles, is somebody that he's very, very close with, and there's been a lot of speculation that Florida State could potentially get in the recruitment of Nye Carr. And I will say, sounds like Dane Draper at Noles 247 reported that he's got not only an upcoming trip to Colorado very soon, but he'll also be in Tallahassee for the Florida State-Miami game. Looks like Auburn and Miami both involved here. Some insiders believe that Miami may even lead here. They've done a lot behind the scenes, and it would kind of make sense. Their wide receiver room does have JoJo Trader, but doesn't have a lot outside of that. They swung and missed on Wayne McCoy, who looks like he's going to be staying in FSU's class. And so going after Nye Carr makes a ton of sense. Sounds like the game that Carr could be in attendance for would be Florida State-Miami at the end of the year. And so if you want to land him, would not be an awful move to go out there and beat their brains in like we did last year. He'd be massive for the Noles. I know we already have a stacked wide receiver room, and I think there's more good news coming at wide receiver for the Noles. You're in it for a lot of guys, especially considering the fact that Nye Carr is somebody you're in on it for, JoJo Trader, Jeremiah Smith, and even maybe Cam Coleman, who seems to be still open somewhat in his recruitment. I think the Noles will still hold on to everything they have, but wouldn't shock me at all if they pick up somebody really elite out of that group before that we just mentioned. Okay, I know Jeremiah Smith and Charles Lester were at UF. Talk about those guys in just a minute. But I do like some of the 2025 stuff that I'm hearing. I continue to hear really good things about another kid who is currently committed to UGA, and that's Jaden Perlotti. It's a high-ranked linebacker in the 2025 class. I think the Noles are doing a phenomenal job there. Still, I expect him to eventually end up in Florida State's class, and I think that he is going to be a Nole when it's all said and done. Not a lot of people thought that would happen as soon as KJ decided to commit to the Noles. I think that Jaden wants it to kind of be a little bit about him, not just about what KJ does, but I think that Jaden still ends up in this class. I still think that the Noles end up flipping him. You've got some time because that, again, is 2025. Some guys that I think Noles are still targeting and still doing some good work with are Jason Zandamela, currently committed to USC. Again, you know that his once possible teammate commit, Manisi ITT, did flip to the Noles. I think Zandamela, it's really important to get him on a visit soon. If you can get him to Tallahassee, I think Alex Atkins ends up working the flip, ends up bringing him into this class. If you're not able to get him to Tallahassee, he's from Clearwater, the writing should be on the wall there that he'll probably stick with USC. I've heard that a visit is in the works. Nothing's been confirmed as far as I know just yet, but I do think that's somebody the Noles will continue to push on. I don't know that I'd say that I like him in this class 100% just yet. I really need to see that visit be scheduled and I see that visit take place. Jamari Howard is still something that I'm super high on and think the Noles have a great shot with. I believe that, you still probably lead there. There's been some talk about Miami maybe increasing where they stand there because they've had some success early. They're also 4-0, albeit they haven't beaten a good team yet. 4-0 is still 4-0. We'll see how Miami's season goes down the stretch. I still really like the Noles for Jamari Howard. I don't think that there's been any fall off there from FSU's perspective. One other guy before we get to Smith and Lester is LJ McCray. And I think you're running third in this recruitment right now. I think the Noles have done a good job of getting back into it, and I think they're doing a fairly good job in this recruitment. But I do need to see the defensive line recruiting step up a little bit. And I think you've got a legendary coach there in Odell. I think you've got a good coach in JP, but I really need to see that increase and improve. Florida State's doing some really good things along the defensive line right now, and you've got some guys that are going to be very high draft picks and it's just not translating right now into recruiting wins. You guys know about Armando Blunt picking Miami. You guys know the kid from Bluntstown, Artavis Jones, who is currently committed to Miami. Seen Booker Pickett down here in Tampa, seems to be trending to Miami as well. You're not closing on enough defensive line battles right now, and that has to improve. The recruiting there has to get better, and you could go a long way toward making it better by picking up LJ McCray. LJ McCray is somebody who I would still pencil into Florida's class at this time, maybe UGA if UGA has the space for him. At this point, he is a top 10 player on three, and it's hard for me to think that they don't. So I like UGA, I like UF in that recruitment, but he is going to be in Tallahassee in a couple of weeks. He's visiting very soon, going to be around the time of his birthday. If Florida State can knock that OV out of the park, I think they're in a good spot. There was some confidence from UF that he might be committing a little bit earlier than that visit. Obviously, that hasn't happened. You get him to that OV, you crush it, you knock it out of the park, and you'll see what happens there shortly after. Florida State still has a long way to go in that one, but they're still in the fight. I think running third, need to do some playing of some catch up there. All right, Charles Lester, Jeremiah Smith. I know there's a lot of freak out. There's a lot of meltdown because both of those guys were in Gainesville this weekend. I don't know why there's the meltdown about Jeremiah Smith. He's not currently committed to the Noles. He's not somebody that, is in our class at this moment. So I'm not sure why there's so much freak out there. But he was in attendance. I heard UF paid a pretty hefty penny for him to attend and watch them kick 5 field goals. So congrats to them for the way that they're spending their resources and their funds. For what it's worth, they do have plenty. So I don't think that is too bad against the bottom line. But yeah, they paid a lot of money for him to watch them kick 5 field goals and score 1 touchdown against Charlotte. So funny enough to me. I don't think Florida is a serious contender for Jeremiah Smith. I think that maybe they're running third or fourth here. I think it's Ohio State, FSU, probably Miami after that, and then Florida. I'm not super concerned there. Your big competition is Ohio State. I still think Florida State's running second in this. Just the fact that Florida State still has the official visit with him at the end of the year, and the fact that he's coming in for the Miami game, according to him, I think that's massive. I think Florida State will continue to do work here, and Florida doesn't worry me at all. I think that if there was ever a game that you wanted him to go out and see some offensive fireworks and some offensive firepower, and you just put that performance forward, not the best by Florida there on Saturday. He even commented on it. They can't finish in the red zone. Earlier in the year, they asked him what it would take for him to flip and what it would take for him to be at UF. And he basically said, I need to see how the offense looks. Well, he went and saw it in person this weekend, and I don't think that he was very impressed if I had to take a wild guess at what that offense looked like. So 22 points against the 129th team in college football, not the most ideal. And then Charles Lester. I know that's the big one. I appreciate you guys sticking around till the end of the video for this. Charles Lester at UF this weekend, looking really, really bored there in that picture. Shout out my guy Blake Alderman with Swamp 247 for the picture. Again, I don't have a ton of concern here. Still a Florida State commit. There has been a lot put out over the last week, and they're maybe stealing my move there on their articles with the clickbait. But yeah, I don't really worry about Lester at all. I don't think that he's some kind of a massive, flip candidate for them. He talked about how he's talking with Florida more than anyone else outside of FSU. And then that quote got taken very much out of context and circulated as I'm talking with Florida more than anyone else. They conveniently left out the part that he's still talking with FSU more and still very locked in. His next quote to them was, I'm still very locked in with the Seminoles. Florida's doing their best, but I don't anticipate this being an issue at all. I got confirmation this morning that Charles Lester is visiting Tallahassee in October. I don't have an exact date on that just yet. You have to imagine that would likely be for the Virginia Tech or the Duke game. I think Florida State kind of wants to see what times those games are announced for before locking anything in super crazy. That Duke game, if they beat Notre Dame, could end up being a college game day type environment if both teams are undefeated and ranked well within the top 15, or maybe Duke even pushing that top 10 if they beat Notre Dame. So I think that that's probably where you'd probably try and get the most guys to be in attendance. That's probably going to be a night game inside of Doak, even if Duke loses. But we'll see. LJ's coming for the Virginia Tech game. Wouldn't shock me at all if they try and get Lester or Zanamela or some of these other guys that we mentioned in for that game also. So really big for Florida State to not only get Lester back soon, but probably get him back up for that Miami game, then a weekend in December. Let's talk about Lester potentially visiting Florida, maybe going on an OV. Again, I'm not super concerned there. I think he's going to visit Florida State a few times before the signing period is here. I think Florida's just doing anything they can to have a kind of a last gasp effort. Heard his brother was all decked out in FSU stuff while in the recruiting section, so that's always kind of fun to hear. My concern level with Lester is almost zero. I know that you guys have PTSD, but I'm not worried about this recruitment at all. Things could change. We certainly could develop some worry down the road, but as of today, September 25th, I'm not worried one bit. So appreciate you guys for tuning in. Let me know what questions you have on any recruits that I missed, anything that we didn't talk about. I just wanted to kind of reset the board real quick, talk about some of these guys, talk about the Noles being 4-0 and what that may do for recruiting. I really like where they stand. I think things need to pick up on the defensive line. Things need to pick up at linebacker. But overall, I think they're in really good shape, and I'm excited to see where this class finishes. Again, anybody I missed, let me know down in the comments. We'll talk about them in our next recruiting update, our next recruiting video. Thank you guys, as always, for tuning in. Talk to you soon. Go Noles.